Brad, corporate taxes are coming due in the next couple of weeks here, and I got to get my corporation tax stuff into my accountant. Anyway, long story short, I have to do X number of things in order to hand over all the stuff to my accountant. He could take it from there, but I've got to do certain things because I've got to, I try to keep track of my business, my expenses, and at the end of the year, I do a sort of big review.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hate it. You know this about me.
Yes.
It's the one thing about being a cartoonist that I hate is taxes and the end of year checking all the boxes and all that sort of stuff. I hate it. But here is what's happened, Brad. Over the course of the weekend, I was like, you know what? I'll take a break from preparing for taxes I'm going to organize this shelf. Yeah, I'll just do this one shelf. I'll organize this shelf. And then I'll feel good about having organized the shelf. And I've procrastinated a little bit on the taxes. That's okay, because I've organized this shelf. Yeah. And Brad, I swear to God, over the course of the weekend, I then proceeded to organize my entire studio in order to not do taxes, the corporate taxes that I've got to get prepared. So my studio is humming like it's never looked before. It's shiny, it's bright, everything has a place, everything's labeled. I was getting out the label maker and there's a label for you, label for you, label for you. Brad, anything to avoid doing corporate taxes.
Yeah, well, I know the last time we FaceTimed and I saw your dog walk past the background and he had a label on him that said Ollie. I knew that maybe there was something going on over there.
You joke, but like the Container Store got so much business for me this weekend because I was like, well, I'm going to need boxes for all this. I'm going to need boxes for my boxes and labels for my boxes on my boxes. And so what a way to waste time. I mean, the good news is for the rest of the year, I'm going to have an incredibly organized studio and I know where everything goes now. Like, it is nice to have everything in its place and a place for everything, but I still haven't done my corporate taxes, Brad. When we get done with these mics, I got to go do my corporate taxes.
I'm not going to help you procrastinate any further. We gotta get that show on the road. But I will say you're not alone. My studio gets very, very clean every February.
Yeah, as soon as those taxes come due, that's a sparkling studio for Dave Kellett. And on that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about organizing like nobody's business and making comics.
And loving your label maker and making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the editor of the Webcomics Handbook on Substack and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his pal, Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. So just a quick question for you, Brad, what is your strategy during this tax season? How do you mentally approach it?
I go through a number of steps every year, like clockwork. Step number one is promising that this year or next year, I'll actually start doing my profit loss statements on a monthly basis instead of letting them all wait until January, February of the next year. So far, I'm on a 1 month streak, but if I could just get my profit loss statements done on a monthly basis, this would be a snap for me. Like, it would be so easy for me to just hand this stuff off to my CPA. And every year I say I'm going to do it. And every year at some point in the summer, the closest I got was, I think I made it as far as June. And then, it's like, same old thing. I'm like, well, I'm too busy to do this right now. I'll do it next time.
Right.
And then it's just, at that point, it's just gathering up all the information, and most of my problems is between my ears. And it's the same problem that we've identified in people writing, in that you can't make a mistake if you haven't started yet.
Yes. That's what my procrastination this weekend is like. Well, I haven't messed up anything yet. Yeah. So as long as I'm organizing, I'm still making a positive change in my life.
And it feels so great to have not fucked up yet.
Well, let's jump into our first big topic for this day, because this update, which I'm going to give everybody about BlueSky, is actually triggering for Brad and I a larger discussion we want to talk about in terms of followers and the point of social media. Yeah. So let me first give you the big update for BlueSky. BlueSky now has a version of the app called version 1.98, which, by the way, I recommend that you update. Mm-hmm. And what 1.98 does as an update is you now have the ability to limit who comments on your posts.
Yeah.
So you would go into moderation and then under commenting, and you can either choose to let everybody comment, no big deal, which was sort of the default setting for Twitter and the like, or you can let nobody comment, or the one that I would suggest is you can let just your followers comment.
Yes.
Now, here's one thing that I will say. This is a great move for harassment and a healthier ecosystem. And I say this as a middle-aged white straight guy, is that I know that there are cartoonists for whom abuse is an everyday thing. And I have dodged that bullet. But I think this is an incredibly positive step for Blue Sky to make. And I'll tell you, once I give Brad a second to chime in here, because I know he's champing at the bit.
Yeah.
I think this is a way actually to grow your follower count. But we'll talk about that in a second. So, Brad, what you wanted to tell people how to specifically do it, I think.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You go into settings and then you'll click on moderation and you'll have a section there called post interaction settings. And if you go into there, you can see reply settings. It'll say allow replies from everybody or nobody. And then underneath it says, or you can combine these options. And we're going to suggest you use the one that says your followers. But the options are mentioned users, users you follow, your followers. And then for me, it has the different lists that I've set up. Users in Philadelphia Cartoonist, users in Spice Rack Comics, so on and so forth. So you can select from all of those options. I think, Dave, what you and I are suggesting is select your followers, maybe even users you follow. Because if you're following somebody...
Yeah, that usually means you like them or you trust them or they're in your sphere. Yeah. And I would also, it's also kind of a jerk move to not let the person that's been added comment.
Right.
So I would also allow that personally.
Right.
But it's up to you. But in general... For long-standing reasons that Brad established years ago about comments on blog posts, I think this is an incredibly healthy thing to do for your own mental state as a creator, because there is nothing worse online than the drive-by commenter, especially when it's a drive-by shitpost commenter. Yeah. It can ruin your day. You make a great comic that you're proud of, you share it, you're getting great comments, and all of a sudden some asshole comes along who's like, meh, 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 and drives off, you know? Yep. And you're like, well, what the hell was all that about? But then it's sitting in your comments list and other people are seeing it, and then sometimes it triggers a whole thing of, likes beget more likes, and so that brings more jerks coming in. Anyway, I think this is a great move for harassment and a healthy ecosystem of positive comments. Yeah. And Brad, what is your first blush thought about it?
Oh, well, listen, this runs completely in synchronicity with advice that we've been giving for years. Like you mentioned, I said years ago that when I turned the comments off on my website, my life immediately got exponentially better. Yeah. And it runs contrary to a lot of conventional wisdom and a lot of just like people, again, going back to herd mentality. I'm doing this because that's what I heard I should do. It's a lot of, you'd think you should leave your comments on in all situations. But the actual truth is we're getting to a point in web publishing where even commenting, I think, in my opinion, should be more of a privilege than something that just is a free service.
Absolutely. And Brad, to me, was a thought leader on this, in that I was like, I never countenanced this as a possibility. Yeah. And honestly, about a year before I ever implemented myself, Brad was like, Dave, you've got to turn off comments for the public. Let your Patreon folks comment. Let your people on your Patreon-based Discord comment, but don't do it publicly because you're only getting the asshats. And I will tell you, friends, that Brad was 100% right. My life got better as soon as I turned off public comments. Yeah. And this, I think, is an extension of that exact same philosophy, because we are all aware that botnets, bad actors, propaganda agents, corporate and state-sponsored propaganda agents have made social media, especially on Twitter, unlivable. Like, it's just miserable to post any sort of pleasantry on Twitter without getting... just in the middle of a shitstorm. It's a horrible place because of the botnets and the propaganda agents, the bad actors. And Blue Sky, recognizing that, has put this change in, and I wholeheartedly endorse it. I really, and in general, this goes to a bigger conversation that Brad and I want to talk about today, which is that not every follower, not every comment is a good comment, and not every follower is a good follower.
Yeah, and it goes into something. The way this conversation started is we both said, we've really got to really start banging the drum on getting people off of Twitter.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And you're running a Kickstarter right now. As a matter of fact, we're in the heat of it. We're in the middle of that 30 days for you.
Yeah.
And I know just from talking to you that Twitter hasn't delivered you bupkis at this point.
Well, yeah, and it's worth actually reminding folks, because I don't know if at this point in this show airing, if dogkickstarter.com will be over. And if it is, thank you for everyone who jumped in. But as of this recording, we're at the 15-day point for the campaign. We're halfway through, right?
Yeah.
And so to Brad's point, the last time I kickstarted a book was a Drive book, and I still used Twitter at that point. 10,000 followers translated into 2 people backing that Kickstarter. 2 people. Statistically, that is non-existent. That is a rounding error out of 10,000 people, right? So far, I am 15 days into this campaign for dogkickstarter.com. I only have 4,000 followers on BlueSky.
Yeah.
And so far at the 15-day mark, 32 backers for something like $4,000 have come from BlueSky. That alone makes my time, my effort, my posting, the work that goes into BlueSky worth it for me. That there is about that 32 people that have already jumped in at the halfway mark.
Yes. Here's something I want to mention. How much right now? I think I saw at least a couple of days ago that you had already met your goal. In other words, you've met your goal and you're pushing beyond it. And it wasn't a small goal. I don't know. Well, hell, it's public. What was your goal?
I think it was. Forgive me. It was either 30 or 35,000. I think it was 30,000.
So it wasn't a small goal. You've already gotten past $35,000 on your Kickstarter, correct?
Yeah.
How much outreach have you done in Twitter during this entire campaign?
Zero. And I want to emphasize this and underline this. You do not need Twitter to have a successful career. In fact, my Drive Kickstarter, which is arguably my most successful Kickstarters, they do like $120,000.
Yeah.
I got, a couple dozen dollars out of Twitter.
Yeah.
You do not need it. And it is a cesspool, and you're actively supporting a terrible place, and you're not helping your career. So purely from a pragmatic standpoint, it does nothing for you. Get the hell off Twitter. That number that you think is a big follower count is bringing you bupkis. I don't need to know who you are. It's not doing dick for you. Get off of Twitter.
Let's keep going. How much outreach for this current Kickstarter has happened on Instagram?
Zero. Also, because it wasn't bringing me anything. I cannot emphasize this enough. 40,000 people I had on Instagram.
That's right.
It didn't bring me squat. And so pragmatically, but also ethically, I got the hell off of Instagram. Right. And I recommend that you do too. But again, pragmatic, even just let pragmatic decision-making guide you. It does not bring you income, which is the whole reason you are on these things, is to build a follower count and then bring those core followers to your Kickstarter, to your Patreon, to your book sales, to your comic book signings.
Right.
And if you can't do those 4 things, it is useless for you as a platform.
That was what I wanted to bring up, is that you have divested yourself of the 3 leading social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. TikTok, you don't even use. I don't even know if you got an account on TikTok, right?
Nope.
So,
I mean, I might. I think I tried it when it first came out.
Out of the 4 top social media outlets, you are using 0 of them. And the accounts that you do have, you're not using. You've let those go blank. And it has not impinged upon your ability to do business in the slightest. In fact, I think this is probably one of your strongest Kickstarters that you've done out of the whole group. Probably one of your top 3 Kickstarters historically at this point. Am I talking tales out of school?
In the realm of Sheldon books, yes.
Yes.
Beth and I strongly feel like we're only at the 15-day mark. We strongly feel like this will beat the strongest Sheldon book I've ever Kickstarted.
Right.
In no small part from those 32 people from BlueSky, right?
Yep.
And from not wasting time on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So Let's talk about this because
Yes.
I and Brad have at points in our career fallen into the trap of, a big follower count on Instagram.
Yes.
Surely that's worth something.
Yeah.
I have 40,000 people on Instagram, Brad. Dave Kellett, can't just leave Instagram. Those 40,000 people have come to know me and love my work. Right? Well, have they? I don't know. Is the algorithm even showing me to them anymore? It's certainly not driving anybody to my Kickstarters or to my Patreon from there. I don't know that it's a bit of help at all to do Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
And it hasn't hurt your ability to do business. That's the main thing I wanted to underline.
I will put my business up against any other web cartoonist not doing Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Honest to God, I will show you my books, and you tell me whether your Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook business is doing better. I guarantee you can skip. And it's an extension of our argument against webtoons. Is that a lot of it is the herd mentality of like, everybody's doing it, so I've got to do it. Yeah. No, what you've got to do is build a core follower base on a social platform that lets you link out in a reliable way, and that those people will use the link out in a reliable way to support your business.
Well, I don't want to go too far on the webtoons tangent, but just last week, somebody on BSky was saying, well, webcomics is pretty much dead now. Everything is on webtoons. And I found out about the conversation where somebody atted me and said, well, Geiger's still fighting the good fight. And I'm like, this is an example of your limited scope being a problem. Because if all this person does is read webtoons comics and they're not aware of the larger expanse that is independent comics on the web, they might think that webcomics is dead. Meanwhile, you and I can list off a whole bunch of people that are doing really, really well at publishing online that have nothing to do with webtoons, but because of their limited scope, they can't see that, right? That when you said webtoons, I lit right up. But the larger problem is the thing that we really have to, there's a reason we made this our lead topic today, is because this is a problem that we're seeing an awful lot. In fact, I think it was last episode or the episode before that, somebody was saying that they feel they need to post politics on their feed because it made their engagement go up. And we have to fight this number go up mentality. This mentality of anything that makes your number go up is good, because Dave and I will tell you, making that number go up is not really the most important thing. In fact, it's kind of the least important thing. You're so starved for attention that you'll do anything to make people click the heart button. But unless they're clicking that little favorite button for the right reason, you might be hurting yourself. There's more. We've said it so many times on this show. You don't measure social media by the people. You measure by the passion. I'll take a small audience that's passionate about my comic over a large audience that's ambivalent any day of the week. But we got to break out of this number go up mentality.
I love that phrase, number go up. Yes.
Anything to make the number go up, right? You got to have a big follower count. No, you don't. You got to have an invested follower count. Yes. You got to have a post that has a whole lot of favorites. Let's put this into the correct perspective. Yes, you want to see a certain amount of engagement from a social media post. Of course you do, right? That's something that's important. And I'll go one step further, because I judge myself on this too. If I'm getting engagement, but it's only from other cartoonists, I don't really count that as engagement. Nobody succeeds in comics by promoting to other cartoonists. Right. And other cartoonists, let's face it, there's one of two things happening if you're getting a favorite or a like on your social media post from another cartoonist. A, they're looking at that comic with an entirely different set of eyes. They might like your word balloon. They might like your composition. They might just like that you're out there doing things and that makes them feel good. Or B, and this is more likely, it's quid pro quo. I like you, so you better like me. And next time you see me, you better be putting that heart on it. It's quid pro quo, right? So if you're putting stuff out there and you're only getting likes from cartoonists, you do need to start looking at what you're doing and maybe trying to improve it a little bit. You can't hide. In other words, what I'm saying is you can't hide behind number go up mentality when you're getting no engagement. And that might be an indication that you might need to step your game up a little bit. But in general, while you're posting things up and you're getting a good baseline of engagement, doing things to just simply make the number go up is bad. In fact, again, like we said in that episode previously, you could be building the wrong audience for your comic.
Audience, yes.
Yeah.
And first of all, I've said it before, but I love that phrase, make number go up, because it is sort of like this caveman, like make number go up.
Number.
Must. Yeah. And I had that with Instagram. If I'll be honest, Brad, I was like, I gotta get this number up. I gotta do it. I gotta get this number up. And it gained me nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. Like I couldn't get those people off the platform because Instagram made it almost untenable to do so. And it wasn't a culture on Instagram that moved off platform. They were there for the scroll, just the mindless, endless, mind rot scroll. Same kind of thing that TikTok creates in terms of a mind rot. And to Brad's point, that's not what I want. I want a passionate reader who will be like, "Oh, I love this guy. I'm gonna follow him on Patreon. Oh, I'm gonna back his Kickstarter. I'm gonna go see him at San Diego Comic-Con.
Yes.
I'm gonna buy that book when it's out. This is great." And those kind of actions are the ultimate goal for all of what we do in terms of moving folks up the ladder from first discovering you, then becoming a very casual reader, then a more very interested reader, invested reader, then a passionate reader, then a passionate reader that invests. So yes, not every person that I capture on social media is going to be a backer. Obviously, that's not the case, but you have to have a pragmatic, provable, results-oriented end game for your social media. And I will tell you as a friend, Twitter and Instagram is not going to give you that results-oriented end game for what your social media game. Yeah, and here's where the make number go up problem is leading a lot of us astray, myself included, for a long time. I didn't stop posting on Instagram, even though it was clear that it was not bringing in Kickstarter backers, Patreon backers, book sales, or people to my comics convention, because the number felt good, Brad, to have 40,000 followers on Instagram.
Yep.
It was an ego boost to have 40,000. I was like, oh, this is lovely. I've got 40,000 people reading me. A, no, I didn't. B, I couldn't get them off that platform to save my life, right?
Yeah.
So it really comes down to the pragmatic decision-making of like, make number go up is not as important as make passion go up. That's what you want,
Yeah.
And so Blue Sky seems to have a higher human to bot ratio. And with moves like this 1.9 version 1.98 change, where you can limit who comments on you, that it's going to be less harassment, less bots, less propagandists, less assholes. And what a lovely space to inhabit. You are giving yourself the gift of a cleaner mental state, and you are encouraging good followers to first follow you and then to comment on you,
Right. And that was something that took Dave and I both a little bit of time before we were really ready to pull the trigger on that, because and you hear people say this all the time. They said, "Oh, I spent so much time building an audience on Instagram or building an audience on Twitter." And it's like, yeah, but what you built isn't there, right? It's not there if you can't reach those people. It's not there. That thing that you built is not there. And but even though we both knew that logically, it took a little while because we're both full-time cartoonists. Our ability to reach people is our ability to pay the mortgage at the end of the month.
Yes.
And so doing something like that had, in our minds, had the potential of limiting our ability to do business. That took us a long time to come to that conclusion that we were ready to do it. Yeah. But I guess that's what we're saying, is that we've taken that step, and we can both say with very good reliability that it hasn't hurt our businesses. In fact, I went from a place where, honest to God, Dave, I was probably a little bit more aggressive than you, because of course I was doing TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, a couple of different fan pages there, and Twitter, multiple Twitter outreaches at one point. I was very aggressive in terms of social media and doing a lot on trying out some of those new platforms. I did try out Mastodon, Pillow Fort, a number of those other ones. I was very aggressive about all of that in starting in 2023 and going all the way through 2024. I was doing multiple social media. Right now, it's two. It's Substack and BlueSky. And again, my business is as healthy as it was all the way throughout 2024, if not maybe upticking a little bit. Like it's so hard with right now what's going on in the economy with a lot of people losing their jobs. We're in for a real bumpy ride. So it's hard to make a one-to-one comparison. But I can tell you, I don't miss all of those other social media networks in the slightest. I'm down to two, and I'm focusing all of my attention there. Hasn't hurt me a bit.
Right. And just for the sake of mentioning it, it's not like Brad is saying he's religiously devoted to these two for the rest of his life. Nope. If and when they stop being pragmatically useful to his end goals with social media, he will ditch Substack and BlueSky in the way that he ditched Facebook and Friendster and LiveJournal and Tumblr and all the ones in the past. Like, we use them until they are no longer useful, basically, right? But what we're trying to tell you is, for those that are not familiar, there is a phrase called the sunk cost fallacy.
Yes.
And what this is the short version is, it's your brain lying to you that because you have spent, in Dave Kellett's case, 13 to 15 years on Twitter building that audience. 13 to 15 years, I want to emphasize. That is not a short amount of time.
That's right.
13 to 15 years building an audience that I can't walk away from Twitter now because I've spent all this time building this audience. And Brad, all the thousands of hours posting onto Twitter, I can't just walk away.
No.
Sunk cost fallacy is because you've spent a lot of time wasted on a thing that you've got to keep wasting it because you've already wasted all that time. So you got to keep wasting. No. The idea here is when things stop working for you, you stop doing them. And it honestly is a healthy, a mentally sound reaction to say, Instagram and Twitter are no longer performing for me. It is time that I stop them cold. And emotionally, it will hurt, but pragmatically, logically, it is the right thing to do for your business.
As we wrap up this topic, let's just bring it home with something that you mentioned just a second ago. Eventually, BlueSky and all of those others are going to decline as well.
Yes.
Right? You took it all the way back to LiveJournal. And a lot of people get upset about that. They're like, oh, man, I just wish I could have one thing. And I understand that. I wish that, too.
Yeah. And they say that I'm tired of making the change, that kind of thing.
Being in webcomics means a life of change.
Yes.
You better get used to that. Right off the bat, you don't get to have a static life, right? And the only time I think that maybe was a thing was in the early days of newspaper syndication when the media landscape was a lot thinner than it is right now. And then you better hope that you fit into a certain demographic because you didn't have a lot of chances at newspaper syndication if you didn't.
Yeah. So, and just to interject there. So, if you made it, you had a very stable life. But I will remind everybody, you had a very stable life where somebody else was taking 50% of your income, which should piss you off. And they were giving you a title like Peanuts that you might not even have wanted. You know what I mean? And you better damn well hope that you were a straight white guy because you weren't getting a cartoon position in American newspapers if you weren't. So, all of which to say is, it's not like that was a better system. Yeah, you had stability, but if you were a special kind of person and you were willing to give up 50% of your income and you were giving up a lot of editorial control, anyway, it was not the golden age that people think it was, you know?
And it's gone. It doesn't even matter.
And it's gone.
If it was. It's gone. But that's something that people are continually gripe about, in shitification and so forth. But and that's going to come for BlueSky too. You need to make your peace with that. You need to be, and again, the word of the day is pragmatic. You got to be honest with yourself. BlueSky is going to hit the skids too. We got hopefully 5 years of good BlueSky. If we're being lucky, we can predict a good 5 years.
And then Peter Thiel will find a way to buy it out. And then even though they're a public benefit corporation.
And make it horrible. And all of the other platforms that are working. Eventually, all of these platforms are going to go downhill. Every last one of them. The ones, Patreon, love of my life, Patreon, eventually is going to hit the skids. Kickstarter is too. It's happening for all of them in our lifetimes that this will happen. You got two choices. You can piss and moan about it, and it's going to happen anyway, or you can make the decision right now to stay active, stay alert, and be ready to swing with the changes, because everything that has happened in webcomics, I've charted 5 major upheavals. We talked about this on an episode years ago at this point. 5 major upheavals in webcomics where we had to completely change how we did business. And the next one is coming right around the corner. You can piss and moan about it, or you can keep your eyes open, get ready for it, because the coda to all of that is that there's been 5 major upheavals, and every time things got better for web cartoonists. Every time things got better. It was an improvement every time. That's something to keep in mind. All of this stuff.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, by the way. I was surprised to hear you say that, but as I thought about it, I was like, he might be right. Jeez.
Yes, it has only gotten better. Now, that doesn't mean that we're guaranteed better, but we are guaranteed. What we are guaranteed is opportunity. Every damn thing that comes down the pike that it feels horrible. Dave, it felt horrible when we lost ad networks and the ability to put ads on websites and pay the mortgage with it, which we both did at one point. It felt horrible to lose that. But only after losing that did we discover monthly crowdfunding in Patreon. Yeah. Right? That's what came directly as a response to losing ad networks. Patreon app. It was an opportunity. It was painful as hell. I don't want to live through that. I remember that. It was 2013.
I like that you say it like it was a day. I remember that Tuesday, and so the ad market fell apart on a Tuesday.
Yeah, it was a decade.
But no, he's not wrong. Within like a 6-month period, it was pretty quick and some cartoonists who were not, for whatever reason, didn't have the ability to pivot or change.
Yeah.
They kind of lost a chunk of their career in a way that, and so part of Brad and my longstanding advice, why we always say keep your head on a swivel and keep watching what peers and professionals are doing, is that every 6 to 18 months, there's going to be some significant change to your career. Yeah. And once you embrace that that's okay, and actually to Brad's point, most often means of an improvement with time. Yeah, it's actually quite enlivening in the sense that we're not doing the same office day job day in and day out for 50 years. Things are changed for Brad and I considerably, but it's kind of fun in that it's also kind of terrifying every 6 to 18 months. There's some new thing, but it's also kind of fun. Like for me, if you go back and listen to the shows, when I saw that Twitter wasn't performing, it was terrifying for a while because I was like, dang it, I gave 13, 14 years to this platform. What a waste. And there was at the time, you remember me saying we're going to be in a liminal stage for a while until a new platform comes along. I hope you remember me saying that.
Yes, I do.
And thank God it did. And BSky is actually performing. And so that's what Brad and I are trying to tell you, is that from a pragmatic, useful, mentally healthy place, it's time to ditch the number go big mentality of Instagram and Twitter and to switch over to Substack and BSky and platforms that are performing for you.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
Dave, it's time for an update. And I know that they're not a sponsor for this episode, but I just want to give, out of personal appreciation, I want to give a shout out to Tom and the gang at Hogan's Alley magazine. they sponsored a show a couple weeks ago, and we told people how they could get a subscription. And although I've read it in the past, I haven't picked up a copy in a while. I went to the website myself and not only got a subscription, but picked up a couple back issues. And with the reason being that me personally, I've needed to stay on guard against my own personal doom scrolling.
Yeah, for your mental health. Yeah,
as we're heading into into this year, and lying in bed and scrolling social media is not good for my mental health right now. And so long ago I got into the habit, and I suggest this for everybody. I plug my phone in on the opposite side of the bedroom. In fact, I even put mine in a drawer.
That's a superpower. I can't do it. Good for you.
I can't even
keep going.
see it. I put it in a drawer. Can't see it. If somebody needs me in the middle of the night, they'll find a way to get me. I don't need that. I don't need that shit.
The old rock through the window technique. Yes. Okay,
that's right. Going. That's right. Or they can do without. But even so, I found myself lying in bed scrolling before I put it on the other side. And it's like, that's got to stop. And so I started making a stack of things by the nightstand that I could read instead. And I'm telling you, the amount of enjoyment I got out of Hogan's Alley magazine and its ability to stop me from doom scrolling has been immense. It's filled with comics history, the kind of stuff that I really love, even dumb stuff. Like the one that I got had a story about the Katzenjammer Kids lawsuit. When
it became the captain and the kids?
Yeah. When the guy that created it tried to go to a different newspaper, and the newspaper that had been running him said, well, screw it. We'll keep running the Katzenjammer Kids. We'll just get another artist to do it. And at one point, Katzenjammer Kids was running 2 different versions in 2 different newspapers. And of course, that sparked a lawsuit. This issue had talked about all of that. Very fascinating stuff. And by the way, it's 144 pages of 8.5 by 11. Like, it's a big freak. I wasn't prepared for how big it was when I opened up my, it was like, oh, I can't remember this being this big, but there it was in my hands, this huge tome. And also had a great article on how, and by the way, several pages. This is deep reporting stuff. When Frank Frazetta used to ghost for Al Cap in the Lil Abner comic strip.
What? I did not know Frazetta ghosted for Al.
That guy can draw. Oh my God.
Frazetta
Plus,
was amazing,
he was a character. There's a picture of him in the magazine, him in his leather jacket in front of a motorcycle. The guy was a cat. He was a tomcat. But like, he used to draw these amazing Lil Abner cartoons for Al Cap. But it talked about how he ended up doing that, and how he finally, basically, he had a friend that was saying, dude, you're wasting your time, because nobody know he was a ghost. Nobody knew he was doing it. It wasn't his art per se, and finally got him to, kind of evolve his career to the next step. Fascinating reading. And I haven't been doom scrolling a bit. Plus, I'm telling you, it was not expensive to get this magazine. So I just want to say how much I enjoyed it. And if you're in the same mental place I am, go over to hoganmag.com and pick up a few back issues and do yourself a favor. And there's such good stuff. And for the people that like this podcast in general, holy cats, you can't do better.
Well, I have to say, first of all, as a friend, how lovely that this is working for you as in terms of avoiding doom scrolling.
Yeah.
But as an avowed capitalist, I am shocked and saddened that you would give free advertising, you son of a bitch, on our podcast.
I know I shouldn't. I shouldn't have done that, but I shouldn't do that. But you know what? For the amount of enjoyment I got out of it,
for God's sakes, I'm kidding.
Oh, I know.
I'm kidding. No, I also, it's also just, I love that Frazetta ghosted on Al Cap separately because what was Al Cap? Was Al Cap like, I'm too busy being a racist monster. I don't have time to draw this strip. And so he's like, I'm going to bring in Frazetta to draw my comic for me.
It was a different time. And again, I'd love to go back and live in those times, but like he had an entire office full of people. He was doing very little other than the horrible things that he did at that
other
time.
Than being a horrible human being.
He had writers, he had artists, it was a different, and he was a millionaire. Like he was not hurting financially. He had enough to do this.
That's when the money was still good.
Yeah.
But no, first of all, I'm glad this is working for you. I am genuinely, all jokes aside, I am genuinely glad of the plug. And I be honest with you, I think I might start trying that instead of my doom scrolling as well. Yeah. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, it has been good for my mental health. So speaking of mental health, we've got a question that came in from patreon.com/comiclab. And it also, I think it has a mental health twist to it. Yeah.
Okay.
Here's how it goes. Dear Comic Lab dads, I think I've lost my Kickstarter mojo. My last campaign was extremely difficult. Despite having many successful campaigns over the years, my 7th Kickstarter failed to fund. Despite using my usual marketing cadence to my email list and past backers, the relaunch was a success, but then life threw just about everything at me to get between me and fulfilling this book. Now I can happily say that I'm just waiting for the books to arrive in print so I can finish fulfillment. I was planning for my next campaign to be a nice trade collection of my series so far, but I've been having trouble getting myself to start organizing assets and to set up what I want to do with the book. I used to get so excited thinking about what my next Kickstarter would be, and especially for the opportunity to do a full collection, but now I can't bring myself to tackle it. The thought of another multi-month grind to get everything together, run the campaign, and assure my partner that I haven't forgotten that they exist, only for it to possibly end in failure, has me frozen in my tracks. Is there any way I can snap myself out of this and move forward? Encouraging words or a swift kick in the ass, metaphorically, are all appreciated. So, Dave, this sounds like it dovetails really nicely with a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about today. This person has lost their Kickstarter mojo. What's your advice?
Oh, boy, I have a lot. So I want to say, firstly, you are not alone in feeling this. And I don't want to unjustly include Brad, but I will think that both Brad and I can say that we have come off of Kickstarters exhausted, sometimes filled with a little bit, sometimes a lot of bit of self-doubt, sometimes not sure we ever want to go through the process again. And so everything that you're feeling, first of all, I just want to assure you is natural and can be natural as part of the Kickstarter process. Because let's be honest, it's basically a big public audition that requires a lot of work. And then sometimes at the end of it, the casting agent goes, no, you're not the one for the part, And so you're like, you got to trudge back. And so it is hard. It's hard to do. It's also just emotionally exhausting as well as being physically exhausting. There's so many assets that you have to create for a Kickstarter, in addition to the assets of creating the physical thing that most likely you're creating with your Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So it's this 1-2 punch of all this work behind the scenes that a lot of people never see. Yeah. It's a lot to be done for it. And when it doesn't pay off, and I had 2 books in my repertoire that while they funded for the Kickstarter, they sort of limped over the finish line, which in a way can be its own kind of pain, because then you got to do the book, and then it didn't really bring in the profit that the studio needed that year, and you're like, oh, okay, time to put up a lot of eBay pieces this year, And so I just want to tell you that I feel what you're feeling. You are not alone in this,
and I sense a theme here. Because what did we say at the very top of the show? You can't make a mistake if you don't start.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It feels so good to not have fucked up yet. and I think there's a little bit of that going on here. I think that I have to be honest with yourself about that. And of course, just general mental health issues right now, I can understand that. right now it's very, very scary to start a Kickstarter for a print merchandise with talks of right now, as of today, and today is late February, the tariff talk has started up again. There's a lot of there's talk of possibly taking over the United States Postal Service, which is going to completely screw up shipping prices. How do you plan for shipping prices if the USPS goes away or gets taken over, and they will make we've seen no slow changes so far this year. All changes have been overnight changes.
And all taking an axe and a flamethrower to things.
Yes.
You know, like there's no construction. It's all destruction. But anyway, keep going. Yeah.
So you're forgiven for not wanting to jump into that with both feet. And in fact, in many cases, for some people, like if this was not your main source of income, taking a wait and see attitude might actually be the better choice.
It might be the healthy response, actually. Yeah.
So I don't know how to tell you to get your mojo back. The only part about this that I can suggest is that for me, in my mentality, and I think Dave's the same way. You said you had a Kickstarter that didn't fund, and that kind of threw you for a loop. For me, my mentality would be I've got to figure out why that didn't fund, and there's a lot of potential reasons. And then I would be champing at the bit to do that next Kickstarter so that I could prove my theory was either right or that I still need to go back and theorize. Right. So you can take this as a challenge. You can, and challenges fire me up. Like if you dare me to do something, or worse yet, you tell me I can't do it, then I get fired up in finding a way to make you eat those words. And again, I've had a 25-year career in comics that has been powered mostly by spite. So this should be no surprise to anybody. But if that's not the thing for you, perhaps finding what fires you up. Like for me, it's spite. Maybe it's something else for you. Hopefully it's something else for you. I'm sure it's a better, healthier way to live. But if you're looking for restarting your mojo, find what kind of thing is hiding behind that Kickstarter that you can use to fire yourself up. For me, it would be the mystery. I'd have to figure out why that one didn't fund, and I'd have to prove it to myself. I'd need to solve the mystery. What is that for you? It doesn't have to be the same thing. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about this, but I think the first step in solving your Kickstarter mojo problem is finding what motivates you to do a Kickstarter in the first place.
Yeah. It's and on a separate note, we should just applaud you that Kickstarter, it's good on you for doing Kickstarters because they're hard to do, and not everybody is willing to take them on, but they can be, in addition to being hard, they can be really great for a career. Brad and I rely on them at core moments in our career path. But I will say too that it is, if you step back from it and look at it logically, a Kickstarter really is, in the clearest possible way, market testing for what's working, right? And that can be both hard to hear sometimes and sometimes reassuring to hear. Like, okay, what did I do for books, 1, 2, 3, that they succeeded really well on Kickstarter and book 4 didn't fall apart? What changed? Is the story perhaps getting tired for readers? That's a possibility. Did I change up how I did my outreach? That's a possibility. Yeah. Did the book price go up significantly? That's a possibility. Like you can start to, and Brad's point, you can start to see like which boxes would I like to check or uncheck on the next Kickstarter as a way of, again, market testing. What was it that's causing this? And so in a way that's reassuring because you are not out any money. You haven't printed these books that aren't going to sell, which by the way, 20 years ago, Brad and I did that, and that's not great. Yeah. So this is better than that. But it does, there's no argument. It does take an emotional toll, but maybe give yourself 4 months, 6 months just to sort of lick your wounds and then say, all right, I'm back in it. And I can kind of see why it didn't succeed last time. So let's try X, Y, Z. Don't you think, Brad?
Yeah, you just kind of lit me up on something, and one of the things could be the structure of the Kickstarter itself, right? Because when I hear 7 books, I hear multiple books. The first thing I'm looking at in that Kickstarter that didn't fund is, did you set up a ladder for your backers, right? Did you set up something where they could get the first book and then the first 2 books, or and I see this happen from time to time. Did you not set up a ladder and just assume that they would use add-ons to do that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see people get confused about what's a reward and what's an add-on. Yep. And there can be a lot of crossover.
And to that point, that's why I think, to Brad's point, you need both belt and suspenders. You do need reward tiers, but you also need add-ons, because also some people, to Brad's point, just read it wrong. They don't understand how it works. And so some people will go the belt route. Some people will go the suspenders route, you know?
But I see people not do the ladder, and they just assume they're going to do the add-ons. It's like, no, you've got to build that ladder. And if you've got other books in your library that you can put into that, that's your go-to on that. So yeah, I would look at Kickstarter structure too. It could just be a simple structural issue that you had there. But no matter what it was, you've got, I don't know that Dave and I can ever tell you, well, this is what you need to do. You know, you're going to have to do this, this, and this, and then you'll have your mojo back. I'm going to tell you something I used to tell my kids when they were little. Listen to your uh-oh voice, right? If you're in a situation and that voice in the back of your head goes, uh-oh, listen to your uh-oh voice. You know, if your voice is telling you pump the brakes a little bit, pump the brakes. Give yourself a month to sit back and think about it. You know, I'm assuming this is something that it's not your full-time avocation. It's not your full-time job. If this is your full-time gig, then yes, it's time to put your big boy pants, your big person pants on and get out there and figure out how to do that. That's another thing altogether. But if you're not in that situation, if you're more on the pro-am side of the spectrum, sit back and take some time to get your sea legs again. That can only be good for you, I think.
And it's not the worst thing in the world. I will say this: to let the market, let your readers, not your reader, readers tell you that maybe path A is better than path B. You know, and this is one of those ways that they tell you. I will tell you from my own experience, and longtime listeners of the show will know this, is that for a couple of years there, I really struggled with how much emphasis I should continue to put on Sheldon. Brad will remember this as well. Yeah. And Kickstarters, along with Patreon, were one of the ways that the market let me know, my readers let me know, that if I kickstart a Sheldon book, that's $30,000 or so. If I kickstart an anatomy book, that's $50,000 or so. If I kickstart a drive book, that's $120,000 or so. So you tell me which one I should be putting my emphasis on. You know what I mean? If I derive damn near equal joy from making all 3 of those things, well, guess what's going to get the short shrift? Sheldon's going to get and so, yes, there are readers that every once in a while will email be like, I missed the storylines of Sheldon being a billionaire and you just doing those kind of jokes. Because remember, Sheldon's been going for 25 years. And to which I can truthfully respond, I love that too. First of all, I did about 2 decades on it. How many times can you go back to the well, you know? Right. And then also, you and about another 300 people missed that. Everyone else is loving the anatomy books and the drive books. And so I, as a creator who has dozens of ideas I could be doing, I'm going to go with the ones that are working and paying the bills and bringing me joy in that regard too. So this might be a moment of reflection, as painful as that is this path continuing to get the market response that I hoped for? And is there maybe a similar but parallel path I could walk down, you know? For me, that was the anatomy ones, which I'll be honest, I kind of stumbled upon. I just kind of was doing them for fun one day, and then it developed into a whole style of making books. And for Drive, remember, that was the Saturday storyline on Sheldon. And then I let it go for 6 months to see if it had any sea legs. It did. I put a whole nother website up. And Brad, the same way in terms of dipping a toe into Evil Inc. After Dark, you know? And so you try a thing, you let it grow over 6 to 12 months, see if there's sea legs to it, and then maybe spin it off. And maybe this 7th Kickstarter is the way of you saying, oh, okay, time to reevaluate what path to walk down. Maybe Maybe.
Yeah.
But as Brad said, it might also have been execution or timing in that Kickstarter. If you had happened to do it near the election, that might have been bad timing, So I don't know, Brad, any last minute thoughts on that one?
No, I think this is a between the ears kind of question. I feel for what this person is going through, but
Yeah.
I think this is just a moment for quiet reflection. I think they know what the answer is deep down inside, and they just had to take some time to listen to themselves. Because there's no real answer to this question. I don't know how to help you get your mojo back.
Yeah, I will just say this with Sheldon. Granted, it's been going for 25 years, but I've been feeling the long in the tooth kind of it up for about 3 years now. And it's Brad can attest to this. It's been painful to sort of be like, all right, time to kind of diminish how much Sheldon I produce.
Yeah.
And kind of up my game with anatomy books and with drive books. And this might be a slower process for you than you would like. It's not immediate. When you've put in enough time, love, and energy into 7 different Kickstarter projects, and then the 7th one doesn't work out, of course, that can hurt a little bit. So be kind to yourself. This is not, by the way, the world telling you to give up. I really do think it's just a time for evaluation, not throwing in the towel.
Yeah. Interesting. So listen, do we have time to sneak one last question in, do you think?
I always have time for one more. Yes,
All
my
right,
friend.
because this is a thinker. This comes in from Garth, who says, "Hey, Brad and Dave, because words have meaning and everyone loves a good pedantry, what do you consider the difference between a graphic novel and a comic book? Furthermore, how does..."
All right.
And Garth goes on to say, "How does a comic strip differ from a comic book? What does the spectrum of sequential art look like?" But I'd like to
that's
take
a lot of questions now.
I think let's take that first one, because I think there's a lot there. What's the difference between a graphic novel and a comic book?
Oh, this is a good question.
I'll tell you what my answer is.
Okay, yeah, you go ahead.
Because maybe I'm missing something, but for me, this is very simple. A comic book has a staple, a graphic novel has a spine. And that really, for me, is almost the whole thing. It's like a comic book is a floppy. It comes out usually on a monthly basis. It's got a staple. And a graphic novel could be a collection of comic books printed maybe a little bit nicer, or maybe it's just a standalone book, but it's got a spine. In other words, it's got more pages. It's got much better printing, much better production values.
True, that is true.
And it's more of it's something that is not going to come out every month. It's going to come out on a slower basis because it's a more substantial thing.
Okay. Let's unpack that for a second. So a copy of Invincible comes out and it's stapled, like Invincible 98 or whatever. I don't know what it's on. When Invincible gets collected and has a perfect spine binding, that is now a graphic novel in your mind?
Now it's a graphic novel. Absolutely.
So, okay. So let's start fresh from my perspective, and then we'll try to meld these two definitions. So in my mind, Brad's coming at it from more the physicality of what the thing is, right? This is a stapled floppy versus a perfect bound soft cover or hardcover, right? That's what you're coming at. All right, so I'm coming at it more from a mood, and my mood is a comic book is just a black coffee that you're drinking at the bus stop, right? A graphic novel is a hoity-toity latte with triple half calf and a almond milk twist, and with a little hint of cardamom and cinnamon.
You are from California, aren't you?
No, I'm just saying it's a mood shift. Of comic book is more bubblegum to me in terms of definition, and graphic novel feels more meal-like. You know what I mean?
Well, okay, would you say this? A comic book is more of a chapter in an ongoing story, whereas a graphic novel is either the story or a much bigger portion of that story.
Perhaps. Let me take a completely different tact, because the comics historian in me with my useless master's degrees wants to use them for a second and tell you that historically, one of the reasons why the phrase comic book came around was when comic strips would run in a newspaper. Somebody had the bright idea, and it was a brilliant move in capitalism standards. They took pre-existing, already run comic strips, gathered them together into a 32-page book that a kid could afford for a nickel at a newsstand, and said, look, this is a book of comics. It is a comic book, right? And so you had Cats and Jammer Kids and all sorts of bullshit collected into comics, and then eventually somebody said, hey, how about we start creating original stories in this format? And for whatever reason, Westerns died out, romance died out, but superheroes stayed around. And so we have this image of that's what a comic book is, right? And then in the 80s, somebody said, hey, comics can be more than just for kids. We could start selling serious stories. How about The Watchmen? How about Mouse? How about later on Blankets? Stuff like that. We're going to use the hoity-toity phrase graphic novel. And I think it was Eisner that came up with that one, right? For Conversations with God. Anyway, you get where I'm coming at this with the historical standpoint, that traditionally comic books were the collection of, at one point, previously run standalone comics. And then it became in original stories in that format. Graphic novels were a very conscious attempt to make comic books a little more hoity-toity and taken a little more seriously and frankly charging more and getting more of a profit. And so that historically was the difference. But you and I, for our two different interpretations, Brad, you saying it's about a staple versus a spine, me saying it's about a black coffee versus a hoity-toity cafe. I would argue that all three of those are accurate. Your definition, my definition, and the historical definition all kind of are saying the same thing, you know?
And it's a difference between having one thing that just boom kind of exists in time and having something else like a comic book that is more sequential in story. Like, there's going to be another one next month. There's, another comic is always coming out next month, whereas a graphic novel is more of a statement. A comic book is more of an ongoing thing that you get in installments.
Yeah, and I will say, sort of as an extension of the historicism of it, is that comic book to me always implied a certain amount of disposability. Whereas a graphic novel was the thing that you kept. You know what I mean? And granted, this is not taking into account the collectors that are like, I bagged it immediately and it's a 10. What I'm saying is that for the average person in the average way of interacting with a comic book, you would throw it away after a certain amount of time, you know? For a graphic novel, you're most likely going to put it on a shelf. To Brad's point about it having a spine, it was meant to be stored and ideally read again. A comic book was meant to be read and tossed after you got off the bus, you know?
But just because something comes out on a regular basis doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. I'll give you a great example. We're going to do another one of these podcasts next week, and it's going to have just as much value as the one that we're wrapping up right now, as we're saying that you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
I hope everyone appreciates what a little angel we have in Brad Geiger with that transition.
Well, Lucifer was an angel too.
What a little angel. And I will say your hosts have been my friend Brad Geiger, the Luciferian editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com.
And my friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com. And Dave, speaking of dogkickstarter.com, how many whiskey sours am I up to?
You're currently up to 9 whiskey sours over at dogkickstarter.com.
Yes. Oh, it's going to be such a good Friday night.
I am bankrupt and Brad is a drunk. That's what we're going to get to at the Rubens.
I found the great tagline for that. Get a great book about dogs and teach my liver who's the boss.
Oh, speaking about teaching someone who's the boss, I should mention Brad's been offering a great service over at webcomics.com's Substack, where, what's the way you would describe it, Brad? It is a review. It is an ongoing tutorial. It is how would you describe what it is?
It's a consultation.
Consultation. That's the word that my brain couldn't remember. Too many whiskey sours for Dave Kellett.
No, what we do is we schedule a 1-hour sit down on Zoom, and you tell me a list of things that you're concerned about, and I prepare a top-down consultation on what you're doing, whether it's your comic itself, the writing, the art, that kind of thing, whether it's your social media, your merchandising, I've done a pre-flight on Kickstarters. I've done a review on how you have your Patreon set up. And we talk about how you can improve any of those things, including not safe for work comics. Obviously, I've got a background in that, and there's a lot of things for people to navigate there. So if you go to the Webcomics Handbook on Substack, or if you go to webcomics.com, you can see the comics consultations are listed prominently there. And I'm telling you, it's been, not only has this been, I've been getting great feedback from these, but it's also just a fantastic opportunity to sit down face to face and talk comics on a really high level that you don't get all the time. Talking with people that you can really go into the weeds on some of this stuff. The conversations have been amazing. So if you're interested in the consultation, you can book one now.
I love that you're doing it, and I will tell you honestly, I have booked one for me so that Brad is forced over the hour to do my corporate taxes. So
that's right.
This is,
that's right. As long as you sign that contract that says that I'm not responsible for any mistakes.
Yeah, that's right. And I will say the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net, and this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode. If you haven't given us a 5-star review on Spotify, what are you waiting for? Get off your keister, get over there, give us a 5-star review. That we have seen some really great engagement from that. Speaking of platform engagement, because we know we're bringing some new listeners in, and they get into that Discord server and they're like, oh my God, where's this been all my life?
Exactly,
so we know that we're connecting with people, and you're helping us to do that. But if you haven't done it yet, this is one way. It doesn't cost you a dime. Get out there, give us a 5-star review, help us to get this show in front of more people.
And I will say Comic Lab is made possible by your support at patreon.com/Comic Lab. So I will go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com. They renamed the Katzenjammer Kids the Captain and the Kids. Walk, walk. Brad, you know the organization procrastination is proving to be a problem when you run out of ribbon on the label maker.
Oh my God.
And you're like, I gotta buy more ribbon.
Label tape?
Yeah.
That stuff?
And so rather than do taxes, I have another shipment of label tape coming in so that I can keep organizing, Brad. I have a problem, Brad.
Shipment, if I was you, if I were you, I'd drive out to someplace to buy it. That's going to take up a lot more time. You should drive out to a place to buy your tape, and then on the way back, make sure that you back up over top of the tape making machines so that when you get back, you need to go back out and get a new tape make. I could kill a lot of time for you.
So gang, if there's one thing that Comic Lab is teaching you, is that the way to approach your taxes is if you give a mouse a cookie.